All right. Welcome everybody to the second part of the AMA. As a reminder, last week's AMA was cut. Uh, thank you, Luca. Wasn't cut short, but it was obvious that there are more questions to be answered, and that we didn't have enough time to finish it last week. So here we are, just days before the holidays begin. The second part of the AMA. We're going to structure it like this. Yago has a presentation he'd like to share. So we're going to start with that. Um, and then, thank you, Yago. And then we have questions collected from the community. So whatever was not to be answered during the presentation, I'll ask Yago. And of course, feel free to type questions in the chat, and we'll pick it up from there. Thank you very much, Yago. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, French. All right, cool. Let's do it. So, I've put together. This is not going to be the as pretty as some of the other presentations that we typically give, because I made it myself. And what I'm going to be talking about is pretty cutting edge thinking. So, um, in a way, you guys are kind of like guinea pigs because I haven't had much opportunity to talk about these things publicly yet. Um, and so you guys are going to have to bear with me. What we're talking about here, I think, has massive implications, um, and represents a very fundamental rethink of how we think about crypto and even how we think about Bitcoin, and certainly how we think about Sovryn. So I'm going to talk about where I think we are in the industry, where the technology is heading, and what the implications are for us. And I'm going to start with a key question that has been like one of the main debates in crypto for a long time. And that debate is, are we going to have like one winning chain? I don't know, Ethereum or Bitcoin or I don't know, whatever different people think is going to be the one winning chain. The reason people say that there might be a one winning chain is because of the network effects of a chain, because of the liquidity effects of a chain, and because ultimately having many chains is that makes it impossible for us to have an internet of ownership, an internet of value for everyone. Or are we going to have a multi-chain world where many different chains exist at the same time? Some of them are specialized for different things, and you go to whichever chain is best at whatever it is, and developers choose to build in different chains based on their, you know, application and user needs. And so I'm going to argue today that both of those are wrong. We're not going to have a single chain environment. We're not going to have a multi chain environment. We will have something far more interesting and far more complicated. And there will be dominant chains in this. There will be many chains in this. But the most important thing about it is that the chains are not going to be the key part of this industry. We're going to stop calling this industry the blockchain industry. And for the most part, as we start to see adoption of these technologies and as crypto becomes mainstream for finance, for compute, for every basically valuable digital activity that we're involved in, people are just going to simply stop talking about chains and ultimately won't even think about chains or only vaguely know what chains are. Chains are going to kind of become like this the the motherboard in your computer. Nobody ever thinks about the motherboard in the computer. Nobody ever talks about the motherboard in the computer, and younger people don't even know that motherboards exist. So, why is this going to happen? Well, right now, I think we're in a massive transition period for crypto. Massive transactions are both opportunities and create uncertainty. And I think everyone in the Sovryn community right now is feeling both of those things. Massive opportunity, but also the gnawing anxiety of uncertainty. Where are we going? And the reason that this is happening, a big part of the reason that this is happening, is because we are moving from a world where we spoke about monolithic chains, right? A single chain, like, and I think the best example of a monolithic chain is Ethereum, right? They try to stuff everything plus the kitchen sink into Ethereum. Execution, settlement, consensus, data availability, the smart contract languages, the VM, everything got shoved into a single chain. And like every Bitcoiner told them, it doesn't scale, it doesn't work. And so what we've now moved on in Ethereum and increasingly everywhere in the crypto space, we're moving into a modular world where chains are being unbundled and the different functions of chains are being unbundled. So Celestia is just a data availability layer. Ethereum is more and more becoming a settlement layer for different rollups. Execution environments are being unbundled even further, and you can now start writing in languages that chains weren't even designed to understand by proving the computation of those languages to those chains with ZK proofs. We've got a huge ecosystem of sort of players who are unbundling the chains. And the truth is that even the modular vision of where blockchain is going doesn't go far enough, because it's just the beginning of it's just like the first little piece of unbundling. If you look at the Ethereum environment today, 90% of transactions occur off chain, and most of them are not even communicated directly to a rollup or a chain. Instead, they go through different kinds of sort of crypto middlemen. Um, Sequencers, MEV searchers, builders. What are builders? Builders are people who take a whole bunch of different transactions and put them together and sort of bundle them into sort of pre-built blocks. Aggregators, bridgers, abstraction layers, account abstraction, and gas abstraction layers. That just the ecosystem of players, and I've only mentioned like a small portion of these different players and services who are now involved in this, have meant that the crypto ecosystem, and I think Ethereum is a really good place to look because it's sort of at the leading edge of this, has become massively complicated, and it becomes even more complicated when you start thinking about not just a specific ecosystem like Ethereum, but the entire crypto ecosystem as a whole, with the bridging activity and the ag layer activity and the cross-chain data transmission systems that are already in existence and that are being built. So basically, chains are already fading into the background. And this is introducing a new conception of crypto, of applications that are unchained to any specific chain, that a world of computation and services which are primarily occurring off-chain and are never actually computed by the miners or the validators of a chain. And what this means is that the center of gravity for crypto is moving away from chains to where it actually should be, to ownership, to tokens. This is basically flipping crypto, the entire conception of crypto, on its head. So, what does this world look like? Well, right now, I think there's very few projects that understand this. Probably the only two projects that truly understand this, as I, based on the conversations I've been having, are BitcoinOS, BOS, and Celestia. And Celestia were basically the people who invented or for the first time coined the phrase, the modular blockchain environment. And what this looks like, a world in with this is it's going to require a way to create interoperability between an ever increasing number of verifiable compute environments, different compute environments, which we up until now have been calling blockchains, but are becoming far more specialized than blockchains. And there's going to be thousands of them. We need a way for these different systems to be interoperable in a trustless way and to interact with each other because they each do just such a tiny, tiny slice of the pie. And there's really only one system that can act as a settlement layer for all of this activity, and that is Bitcoin. And the reason is that the difficulty with building out interoperable systems can be explained through the metaphor of electric plugs. Every time you go to a different country, you've got a different electric plug. And part of the reason for this is that there's this sort of like the problem of standards. Like, okay, I've got 14 standards and they're not interoperable, so let's build a 15th standard which will make them interoperable. Well, now instead of having just one standard, I've got 15 standards. So Bitcoin is unique because it is the only system which is trusted by everyone, competes with no one, and is very, very clearly already like the single consensus system that we can use. And so BitcoinOS is an operating system not just for Bitcoin, but for all of crypto, but it's plugged in primarily to Bitcoin, as anchored to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is going to be, already is really, but is definitely going to be the not just the core of crypto, but the settlement layer for crypto. And so that brings us to BOS, the operating system. What an operating system does is it allows many, many different independent applications, compute environments, to speak to each other and to um, uh, uh, talk to sort of like the CPU, talk to the motherboard. So in this particular case, Bitcoin is the CPU, is the motherboard. We will get to the different compute environments and applications in a bit, but BitcoinOS provides this operating system and it comes bundled with a transport layer, which allows for the movement of assets and the communication of messaging across this ecosystem utilizing ZK proofs, which is what I'm calling Charms Plus here. We haven't ever spoken about Charms really publicly yet. Charms is a totally new way to think about tokens and smart contracts, and we're going to be publishing more information about that quite soon. But basically, it turns smart contracts and tokens on their head. Instead of tying them to a specific chain, it unchains them and allows them to exist across the entire crypto ecosystem by utilizing BitcoinOS and by anchoring to Bitcoin. But they don't have to exist on Bitcoin. So this is a bit mind-bending. I'm not going to be able to do it justice today, but I'm just telling you that it exists. And that moves us into what is going to be sort of where most of the activity is, which is in these various compute environments, which today are mostly chains. And these chains have applications that are built on those chains. But I've made these two categories, I've given them dashed lines because these categories are going to get unbundled. The difference between applications and compute environments is going to get blurred. The difference between a compute environment and a chain is going to get blurred. Applications will be their own compute environments. Applications will not live on specific chains. In chains, the differences between them are going to get blurred as well. And the reason all of this is going to happen is because you can now because first of all, we're unbundling the chains and we're giving out different slices of the jobs that they used to do to all of these different service providers. And through proofs, these service providers are going to be able to communicate as if they are part of the same single environment because they're all on the same operating system. And so what you're going to end up with is, instead of a situation like today, where let's say you want to launch a DEX on a chain, right? So you go and you build Uniswap on Ethereum, and then a new chain comes, BNB or Polygon or whatever. Well, what you need to go and then do is you go and redeploy Uniswap on the new chain because each application is tied to a specific chain. And now you break up the user base, you break up the liquidity, and you have very, very risky bridging in between them as sort of like the only way of connecting these two things. And so instead of having really just one environment where the application lives, you actually have the application copied again and again and again. We've seen this with Sovryn, right? When we launched in Bob, it's basically two completely different. It's like we're running two companies, two projects, two dexes right now, not one. But what we're going to see instead, and what we're building, is the tools to make it possible to have chainless applications, applications that are not tied to a specific chain. So you could imagine what this would look like is Uniswap is deployed once. It's not deployed to any chain necessarily, but it is able to pool liquidity and provide trading across all of the integrated chains. That is where a lot of people are trying to go, and we've, with BitcoinOS, realized that we sort of by mistake have actually built a system that allows for this to happen. We've stumbled upon some really incredible things. Okay. So that's very, very, very high level. And I hope it was clear enough because that was a pretty fast and whirlwind tour of, I think, a major sort of transformation that our industry is going through. And that I think vast majority of people haven't even started to consider yet. But where does this leave us? What is our goal here in the near term? What is Sovryn working on? Well, we have a really big bet. And that really big bet is BOS. BOS, even if I'm wrong about everything I just said, is massively important. It brings to Bitcoin, unleashes Bitcoin from practically all of its limitations. It allows us to build everything on Bitcoin, to integrate everything on Bitcoin, to have applications and use cases for Bitcoin that up until now have been impossible. It is a huge deal and is causing a great deal of excitement for a lot of people. We need to be focused. We need to be focused on making sure that BitcoinOS launches successfully, launches fast, and grows successfully. That is our responsibility because it is a huge bet for Sovryn, and it is the only thing that we need to concern ourselves with right now. And so, all of our efforts outside of the minimal level of maintaining what we currently have, our current suite of applications, is focused on doing our part, which is not most of the work. It's just our sort of contribution to BitcoinOS as we contribute among many other contributors to BitcoinOS to make sure that the BitcoinOS development and launch and then afterwards adoption is as powerful as possible. And we're playing an important role here. And so we need to be super, super, super focused on that. But once that happens, or even to make that happen, what do we need to do? Well, one of the things that we're working on right now is a new version of the Origins Launchpad, which is not tied to rootstock. In fact, it's not tied to any specific chain at all. It is being designed as an early example of a platform that can work across all of the chains. And it is not going to be the most sophisticated example of this. But what it represents is a first way of us thinking about how we can take the work that we've already done with Sovryn and turn it into something which is going to be a centerpiece and important and useful to BOS and live in a unchained world and a world where BitcoinOS is an important project and maybe the most important project for creating this sort of post-chain dominant world. Now, Origins, as this unchained launchpad system, not tied to any specific chain, is part of and is going to sort of utilize and ultimately evolve into something we haven't really discussed yet. But I will be talking about it on this call, and I think it's super exciting. It doesn't even have a name yet, so I'm just going to call it NeoDex. And NeoDex is a decentralized exchange, unlike any other, that already is being built. And in fact, we could potentially, even as soon as February, have a testnet version that you guys will be able to utilize, which is built for this post-chain world, built for the BitcoinOS environment. And from there, well, my view is that there is a huge, like, we're basically sort of reinventing all of crypto. There's a huge amount of opportunity out there. We already have there's already, a number of projects that we can, that we've been thinking about how we can take systems that we've already designed and turn them into the future versions of themselves, right? This is like Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, but not tied to Rootstock, tied to Bitcoin mainnet, and available, the stablecoin being made available everywhere, taking advantage of programmable tokens that are being built by the BitcoinOS infrastructure. And so my view, and I've described this a number of times, is that what we need to do is we need to be building out these systems. The combination of a launchpad plus a cross ecosystem DEX will position us very, very well to then build additional projects and launch them. And that all of these projects, all of them, should be built in the same way that we're building BitcoinOS. That they have their own team, their own funding, their own roadmap, their own strategic decisions, if necessary, their own governance, and if necessary, their own token. We don't try to do everything under SOV, but instead, our business model becomes being first, best, and fastest to building the key components of a BitcoinOS ecosystem and an unchained world. I'll in a bit in this presentation, I'll talk about why I think we should do that. I've already spoken about it previously, and I'll also talk about why I think that's extremely valuable. But before I do that, let's talk a little bit about NeoDex. So remember I was talking about Uniswap? The big problem with Uniswap is that you need to redeploy it on every single chain, and that breaks up liquidity. But there's another problem with it. And this is a problem that we are very familiar with, which is that there's too much slippage when you use an AMM style DEX. And trading becomes inefficient. Becomes so inefficient that, for example, margin trading possibly becomes unrealistic. So let's imagine what a DEX, imagine we had the technology to build a DEX which lived between, not on top of, not inside of, but between many, many different blockchains. And let's imagine that it could trustlessly interoperate with these blockchains. You deploy it once, and it becomes available with every single chain, every single compute environment that is integrated with BitcoinOS. All right, we've solved one problem. How can we solve the other problem? Well, imagine that in addition to that, instead of using an AMM, we actually had an order book, because this system was off-chain. So it was fast enough, efficient enough, powerful enough that you could create effectively a system which feels like a centralized exchange. So that's a lot of work. But those two primary components, the ability to have a exchange, a DEX, which is integrated automatically into any system which is integrated into BitcoinOS, Cardano, Rootstock, Ethereum, Stacks, CoreDAO, whatever, that we already have. The ability to swap assets between these different chains. We actually have already built that as well, both on DevNet. And then the third thing is building it as a order book. We've done that as well. Now, there's actually a project out there which kind of tried to do this, and they're called Thorchain. And the way they did it is they built a chain in the middle with their own AMM. So they tried to centralize the AMM by building a chain and then pointing it to all, and then having like multisigs in all of these different chains. So what we're building is sort of that, but it doesn't need the AMM because it's much faster than a chain. And because it's trustless, it um, it can not only has better security assumptions, but it can do something that the Thorchain can't. Thorchain is only good for swapping between the native asset. Like on Ethereum, they can swap ETH. On Bitcoin, they can swap BTC. On BNB on BNB chain, they can swap BNB token. They can't swap the long tail of tokens. So how could we have a system that would allow you to do that? And so here's an idea. Imagine that you have this system, it's integrated into the chain, and because it's integrated trustlessly into the chain, as you're performing a trade, let's say on Ethereum, for some kind of weird meme coin, for some other weird meme coin on Solana, what you actually do is you route that transaction from Uniswap through the order book to an appropriate DEX on Solana. So you can actually integrate more deeply with these and get the long tail of tokens through integrations with the basically like integrations that you kind of get for free, almost for free, because you're integrated already with the chain, with the leading dexes and even the not leading dexes on these different chains. So it becomes a system where you can basically trade literally any asset. But to do that, there's one more thing that we need to solve, which is you can't really create liquidity pairs between so many different systems, and you certainly can't do it with an order book. So what we need some kind of asset which is going to become like the key liquidity pair between all of these different chains. Something that is traded on all of these different dexes. And that's Bitcoin. So by building through BitcoinOS the ability to have Bitcoin trustlessly integrated into Uniswap, and on Base trustlessly integrated into Aerodome, and on Polygon trustlessly integrated into SushiSwap. And because Bitcoin always has this deep pool of liquidity, you actually always just trade whatever silly asset you want to trade, or awesome asset, whatever. But whatever long tail asset you want to trade for Bitcoin, and then that Bitcoin can be traded for any other long tail asset anywhere else. And so this is really, really cool, because if we can make this work, we're not only reintegrating everything into Bitcoin, but we're reintroducing BTC as this sort of deep pool of liquidity that everything trades against, which over the years, sort of BTC has lost. It lost it first to ETH, and then later lost it to USDT and USDC. Well, we're bringing it back. So, okay, so this concept is already under development. It's a new concept. We don't even have a name for it yet. So I'm going to call it, for the purposes of this presentation, NeoDex. But it is an unchained DEX built on Bitcoin and particularly built around BTC liquidity that will automatically bring in the assets that are traded across DEXs, across all of the chains that are integrated into BOS. And it allows us to take a lot of the aggregation technology and front-end technology that we've already built and the knowledge that we've built around BitcoinOS and that Sovryn has built around DEX integration, and actually use all of that to build a truly breathtaking new product. That's NeoDEX. All right, so I think NeoDEX should launch not as Sovryn, and here's my reasoning. I think what we've always been very good at is R&D. We've built just a huge amount of products over the years. But I think that we've undercut the potential success of those products because we've launched them in an environment where a relatively small project has to maintain many, many, many other projects, which compete for resources, which compete for focus, which compete for attention, which compete for talent within Sovryn. And so I think that projects, to be successful, they need to have a dedicated team, they need to have dedicated capital, and they need to have dedicated token incentives, as well as potentially dedicated governance, dedicated whatever else is required. And so this is why I have proposed that we need to think differently about how we build Sovryn going forward. And I'm going to use NeoDEX as an example. Right? If we try to launch NeoDEX right now, then we have to say Sovryn is going to do nothing else. We need to maybe make changes to the team on the basis of building out a team specifically focused around being the best possible team for the growth and adoption of a DEX. We need to raise additional capital, which would be difficult with the, because of the nature of of tokens which are already live. We would need to give token incentives out, which is difficult for us to do without massively inflating the SOV supply, which we don't want to do. And so for all of those reasons, I think NeoDEX as a separate project, incubated and kickstarted by Sovryn, will be more successful. So we've already built an entire suite of Sovryn products, and we can convert those products to BOS integrated products. But we've also played a crucial role in launching BitcoinOS, which has a very, very good chance of being a huge success. We can then do the same thing with NeoDEX. We can then do the same thing with Bitcoin-backed stablecoins and a large number of other concepts, some of which are quite mature, some of, at least in terms of the thinking, some of which we haven't even thought of yet. If we do that, and we have for each of them the ability to create a dedicated team, dedicated capital, and dedicated token incentives, then we can turn Sovryn into something which I think is super exciting. And I'll talk about what that super exciting thing is in a bit, but first let's talk about what the results would be if we were successful at doing what I've just described. So achievable results include Bitcoin becomes the global financial hub, because BitcoinOS allows Bitcoin to act as the standard to which everything else is anchored. But at the same time, BTC becomes this global settlement asset, first in crypto and then beyond, because you can now trade, basically a BTC to any other asset pair, have liquidity and trade across any chain, any computation, any execution environment in the crypto space. Now, Sovryn becomes the Bell Labs of the chainless world. And SOV becomes an index token of the Bitcoin ecosystem, or at least of a large chunk of innovative pieces in the Bitcoin ecosystem that are launched by Sovryn, and that a portion of their ownership is maintained by Sovryn. So let's talk about Bell Labs. Bell Labs was this phenomenon. Between 1920s and 1970s, it invented literally everything. The transistor, solar cells, the first long-distance calls, the first phone switching systems, provided evidence for the first time of the Big Bang, created the first cellular network, developed the first radio astronomy. It won 11 Nobel Prizes and 5 Turing Awards. But why was Bell Labs able to be, and Bell Labs is a commercial division of the Bell company. Why was it able to do all of this? Well, I'm going to read this for you guys because I want, I spent it. Bell Labs' extraordinary productivity emerged from its ability to anticipate and harness a fundamental shift in the underlying technologies of communication and computation. The transition from analog, electromechanical, and vacuum-type systems to solid-state, semiconductor-based electronics, and subsequently digital communication. I think the key thing here is a fundamental shift in the underlying technologies of computation and communication. Well, I think we're again at a moment where we're at the very beginning of a fundamental shift in the underlying technology of computation, communication, and crypto in the crypto asset space. And I think, with no guarantee of success, but with a very distinct possibility of success, that no project is better positioned in terms of being aware of the change before it's happening, having broad experience with Bitcoin and DeFi that very few other projects have, having already proven the ability to do R&D and launch multiple different products, having already demonstrated with BitcoinOS the ability to do this by launching a separate, independent project in a way which is beneficial to Sovryn. I think it's like almost a wish list of the things that you would want to see if you wanted to achieve something like Bell Labs. I think Sovryn could become legendary in the same way that Bell Labs is legendary, a hive of invention in the same way that Bell Labs was a hive of invention for their fundamental technological shift. And if you do that, I think it's massively valuable because each of these projects that we're talking about launching can be extremely valuable projects. But the overall size of the crypto space, the Bitcoin space, is going to continue to grow at an unprecedented pace for any other industry we've ever seen. Bitcoin today is a $2.5 trillion asset. Not even. By the end of this year, it's likely to be a $5 trillion asset or more. 10 years from now, it's going to be a $100 trillion asset. Or 12 years from now, it's going to be a $100 trillion asset. Multiple trillion-dollar projects, companies, businesses are going to get built around them. And many, 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 many more multi-billion-dollar companies are going to get built around them. I want Sovryn to own a piece of that, a big chunk of that. If we launch a number of projects worth billions and retain, 5-10% of each of those projects, we will be a $50 billion project. That is where I want to get us to. I think that this is achievable for us to start seeing we're already starting to see the fruits of that success. We're definitely going to see the fruits of the first sort of commercial fruits of that success this year. And over the next 12 years, we can turn Sovryn into a legendary project in the same way that Bell Labs or Xerox PARC were legendary projects. Now, here's how you can help. I think we need to have unity around the common cause. There's been a lot of, I caused a bit of a stir in the forums when I said I think we need a CEO. I still think that. I think we can't continue, we were not going to achieve rapid, massive commercial success unless we have unity around a common cause. And ultimately, I don't think that happens through committee. I think that happens through individuals being prime movers. Some people responded to me. I was surprised that relatively few people responded to me saying, this is a silly idea. Way more people seem to respond that was a good idea. but that I should do it. Well, I don't want to do it in the way that maybe you guys thinking about it. I really think that what we need to do is we need to create a system which is going to spawn multiple different projects, and each of them have to have their own team, their own CEO, their own prime movers, their own energy. But I am excited to get us there. And to do that, I'm willing to put out a few SIPs over the course of January to galvanize us around that mission. And I'm going to ask you guys for the authority to make this happen. And part of that is we need to, for the next 3 months, without interruption, without loss of focus, without drama, we just need to come together and be focused on making BitcoinOS the absolute success that it can be. So that's how I think we can come together and how we should come together as a community. But we're also going to need, right now and into the future, talent. And so how else can you help? We need strong biz dev people to help advocate for and bring the world of crypto to BitcoinOS, and later for integrations of things like NeoDex. We're going to need financial analysis, especially around well, there's just a huge amount of questions. If you are mathematically or financially inclined, we can put you to use. We need a huge amount of ecosystem research that anyone can do. We need to understand all of the different systems out there, the different bridges, the different chains, the different wallets. What are their what technology are they using? What are their strategic needs? How have they been successful? Basically, like build like the Mossad of crypto, right? Like understand all of these different projects so that we can integrate them efficiently into BitcoinOS, and then later integrate them efficiently into NeoDex. We right now need a lot of technical writing and documentation to be produced for BitcoinOS. It's just a huge amount of innovations. The level of sort of technological progress that we're making is surprising us. We are stumbling upon just crazy stuff, like the ability to create tokens that can exist outside of chains. It's something that we've just recently realized that we sort of invented while trying to build something else, right? Trying to build tokens for Bitcoin. We don't even have the right, so we need people who have enough technical chops to understand the system that we're building and to write documentation, technical documentation around it. And soon enough, we're going to need CEOs, plural, ideally from the community, people who can become prime movers, proposing their own projects or helping to move forward some of these projects. Now, that's a bit premature for that because we first need to make BOS a success. And then, ideally, we will make some NeoDex a huge success too. And that will give us the chops to go out in terms of the resources, in terms of the prestige, in terms of the reputation, in terms of the profile, to also then go out and become even more aggressive in our ability to introduce new projects and sort of grab territory in what I believe is going to be a massive land grab as the world of crypto changes and as BOS and the BOS ecosystem grows. So that's my vision for where we are now, where we're very, very shortly going, what we need to do in the near term, why this is in the near term super exciting, and why this is in the long term super, super exciting. And I'm going to be asking for your mandate to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iago. This was super interesting and very, very exciting. There are a lot of questions in the chat regarding the presentation you just gave. Let's do those first, and then we'll move on to the questions collected prior to this community call. We have listed. We have scheduled 45 minutes more for this. But I'm gonna hang out as long as Yago can hang out, and if you need to cut off Yago, just say something. Okay. So there are questions from Rafit and from Blue Monkey around the Neodex. In what way is this Neodex related to Sovryn? You've touched upon that. Who gets the fees from Neodex? And Blue Monkey asks, is this Neodex the vision for Sovryn and Sov? And Anip adds a snarky comment, but I'm going to read it anyway, Anip. Please tell us something really about Sovryn instead of diluting it with new projects. I'm really not understanding your rhetoric. So I'm going to wrap all of these into one question. Yago, is there a clarity on how this multi-project future, this Bell Labs model that you propose, how will it benefit Sovryn, and in particular, how will it benefit Sov?
Okay. Let's say I'm right. Let's say I'm 100% right. I'm 100% right. BitcoinOS is a project revolutionary in the same way that Ethereum was revolutionary. Ethereum took the basic concept of Bitcoin and generalized it, created a chain which could be used not just for a single asset, BTC, ETH, but could be used for all kinds of assets. And those assets could be programmable, smart contracts were possible. You could build DeFi, you could build NFTs, you could turn the entire ecosystem into a massive, innovative ecosystem that develops things that maybe we didn't imagine, like DAOs, like decentralized exchanges, like rollups, like ZK proving, etc., etc. So let's take the maximal case here. I'm 100% right. If I'm 100% right, then the prominence of Ethereum, which is like, let's call it crypto 2.0, is going to start to fade. Already is fading, I think you guys can notice, because we're entering the phase of crypto 3.0, and BitcoinOS is going to be the leading project, the marquee project of crypto 3.0. Well, Ethereum is today worth, I don't know, what, like $250 billion, something like that? So if I'm right, crypto 3.0 should be worth more because the entire ecosystem is growing, because it opens up new opportunities that were not possible before, because it cannibalizes the market share of a huge number of things which are basically crypto 2.0. So BitcoinOS should be worth $350 billion. And Sovryn owns 10% of that, or $35 billion. Now, on top of that, we also launched Neodex. And Neodex is successful, but not successful on the same level, right? Just becomes the third biggest, you know, unchained DEX because we don't execute well. All right. So how much is that worth? I don't know. $4 billion, $5 billion, right? We own, let's say, 10%. So how much do we own? 400 million, $500 million. And let's say we do this with a few other projects. Some of them are failures. In fact, 90%, 95% of them are failures. But a few of them are little successes worth a few $1 billion. And one day we launch something which is, again, maybe not as big as BOS, but becomes worth tens of billions of dollars, and we're worth billions of dollars more. If that's the case, Sovryn is just in terms of the assets that it holds, is worth many tens of billions of dollars. And then on top of that, in terms of its ability to continue to churn out these things, its reputation, it is worth many, many, many billions more, right? So Sovryn 12 years from now is, I don't know, a $50 billion project. That's my goal, right? So right now we're a $40 million project. I want to take us 10x to be a $400 million project, and then another 10x to be a $4 billion project, and then another 10x to be a $40 billion project. I want us to go up 1,000x. That's my goal. And I think it is achievable. It is achievable with just one success. One BitcoinOS size success gets us there. Two, we're in a totally different ballgame.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that was very clear. Blue Monkey asks, with this vision, is Sovryn a launchpad, a roll-up in BitcoinOS? What is the launchpad running on?
Running on BitcoinOS. It's running on our talent, our sweat, our tears. It's running on our ability to build a governance system which is optimized for this particular purpose. It's running on our reputation. It's not running on a chain. That's yesterday's thinking.
Thank you. Lumaki continues. If getting talent and resources is a challenge for sovereigns, as you say, then how is Sovryn becoming the Bell Labs of crypto possible? That requires top-level talent.
I think that's the biggest challenge. That is by far the biggest challenge. We've done it before. Look, what we did with BitcoinOS is just absolutely remarkable. We cracked something which a lot of people thought was impossible. We're way ahead of everyone else. We're building momentum all the time. The technology is getting just crazier and crazier. The breakthroughs that we are seeing are getting crazier and crazier all the time. Some of those people are going to circulate back into wanting to build other things for the BitcoinOS ecosystem. As BitcoinOS grows, it's going to increase the profile of itself, but also of Sovryn. Sovryn is going to be able to and need to talk about its success and use that success to attract more people. Use the fact that it's got a very, very significant capital base, a very supportive culture, a very supportive community, to become the place that people who want to, build the future, think about when they think about where they want to go. For a long time, Google was that. It didn't start out that way. It started out with two guys who built something cool. But as more and more people interacted with that thing that was cool, and as they were able to bring in more people, and they built a reputation, and they built a culture, and they built, and talented people started bringing their talented friends. There was this golden period for Google, which lasted a long time, where literally every, 1 out of 3 smart people in the world were working for them. Even today, they're managing to do things which could be of phenomenal value. They recently had a major breakthrough in quantum computing, which is, worth who knows how much. They have one of the most advanced self-driving car systems in the world. DeepMind, which was a Google project, basically invented AI as we know it today. They invented the scaling paradigm. The CTO of OpenAI worked for Google. And the list goes on. These things build their own momentum. There's nothing guaranteed about this, right? We're much, much, much more likely to fail. But I'm not here to think about the failure. I'm here to do everything I can to make the success probable. So, how is it going to happen? that way. We build the momentum. We get people who are smart working with us. We already have them. We start through that attracting more and more smart people to come want to work with us. That's already happening. And we build on that momentum.
Thank you. David, I'll read your question. I'm not sure I get it fully. Crypto 3.0 with Boss leading the whole space is a top number one project. Is this why it was cut off Sovryn and made into as an individual team? And is this what we should keep doing?
We had no choice. There was no way that BitcoinOS was going to emerge from Sovryn. Not in the way that Sovryn was operating. No, not with Sovryn having so many competing um, um, uh, goals and projects, and not with Sovryn acting as a potential competitor to many of the projects that could potentially want to build on BitcoinOS, and not in terms of our ability to raise the kind of capital that we need to raise to make BitcoinOS a success. Just was never going to happen through Sovryn. I think if we try to keep everything under SOV, we just keep on. We need to learn from our successes and we need to learn from our mistakes. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to replicate what we've done with BitcoinOS. I don't think we have to. I think we can have similar but smaller successes and still be a phenomenal success. So, and we already have BitcoinOS. And so that's why I'm saying, like, putting aside all of this other stuff, really, my probably biggest message to everyone right now, what we need to do is we need to galvanize around making BitcoinOS a success. If BitcoinOS is a success, even if nothing happens afterwards, we've all built something amazing, been part of building something amazing, and we're all going to see financial returns that are going to be amazing. But I think we can go much further than that. I think BitcoinOS could be us just getting started.
Thanks. David, I think that also answers the second part of your question. Blue Monkey, very active today. But a good question. Yago, why would builders always want to go through Sovereign as a launchpad? Why would they want to provide 5% or whatever of tokens and just launch elsewhere on BOSS or just by themselves? What are the incentives?
They're not going to want to. They're not going to want to. They're not necessarily going to want to. The only reason they would want to do this is because we create an environment where it's fucking awesome to do it. Where it's fucking awesome to do it. For a lot of people, their number one thing, especially the most brilliant people, their number one thing is they want to work with other brilliant people. That's more important than to them than anything. So we need to have a lot of brilliant people who are attracting other brilliant people. We also need to have a track record of success, which makes people feel like they're massively de-risking by working with Sovryn. Third, we need to ourselves take initiative, see where the world is going, and generate and fund and provide the R&D that is going to make those projects possible. It's not about the Launchpad. Launchpad is like a UI wrapper for some of this stuff. It's about the talent and the governance around the talent and the capital that we can put behind the talent. About the culture we're able to build, about the community that we're able to build focused around this and supporting this. It's about rethinking how we become the best place for the best people to work. That's what we need to build. And the goal here is not to become a VC, right? We're not just going to be investing in other people's projects, or not just to become a launchpad where we launch projects and we just take a fee from them. The goal here is to ourselves see where the future lies and build it. And I think we have the ability to do that. I think we've done it a lot of times. A lot of times. Sovryn started out that way. Not a lot of projects that can say that they've done that. So, so I think we need to structure ourselves in a way where this one really cool thing that we're able to do, which is sort of envision the future and then make it happen, right, is something we optimize for instead of optimizing for building specific applications. And again, I'll say, look, I think, look, there's a huge amount of innovation that has happened within the BitcoinOS team that we're basically going to get for free. EODEX is basically being built by BOS. We're going to get the ability to build on it for free because we're plugged in. So the thing about innovation is it's pure, terrifying, completely uncertain, completely uncomforting uncertainty. There's no guarantees. And so when you look at it, the analogy I always use is it's like you imagine you wanted to climb a mountain. Where you just look at the mountain, it's huge and it's gnarly and it's got these rock faces and there's this massive high peak. And you think to yourself, okay, let me plan out how I'm going to do this. And that's impossible. The way a mountain is climbed is not by pre-planning it. It's one step at a time. You figure out where your next step is, what the next rock you're going to grab is, what the next branch you're going to grab hold of is. If you try to encapsulate it all sort of in advance, it feels impossible every single time. But the fact is, we just need to fucking take a step back. Sorry for swearing, but we take a step back and we think about what have we done already? We launched Bitcoin DeFi as a concept. We built FastBTC for the first time. Like there was no product like it. We built the first Runes bridge ever. We built the first Bitcoin stablecoin that was at scale. We built BitcoinOS. We've done this a lot of times. We need to have the confidence that we can do it again because I think we've earned it. David's asking, so these products like NeoDex are partially built already by us, but lack the resources by Sovryn to be the one to launch and maintain it. I don't think that crypto is space in which it makes sense to build a monolithic megacorp. I don't think that we can be successful that way. I think the way that we can be successful is by surfing the spirit of crypto, surfing the decentralization. It's by introducing projects as their own, basically by decentralizing Sovryn, right? I just don't think that we should model ourselves on, I don't know, Microsoft, which tries to, Microsoft can do things that we cannot do. It can have like a central structure with a central CEO that makes decisions. It can issue more shares to acquire. I mean, most of these companies go through acquisitions. You can acquire a dApp. You can't acquire a chain. You can't, once you've issued the token, you can't just like, it's a totally different environment. We need to build for our environment, not for some kind of like previous corporate model. Okay, so David is asking a lot of good questions. I'll answer. He's asked again. He says, this is a deep vision and possible in theory, but how could this be executed without you as the key CEO since it's your vision? My view is, all right, so first of all, I'm happy to try and lead this effort. I'm going to need the mandate from the community to lead this effort. But given the mandate, I will lead the effort. But I actually don't think that I or anyone else is the right person to do that. There is no right person to do it. This is not a thing that a CEO can do. I have a view on what the right mechanism for this is. I've previously, like last week on the AMA, I sort of hinted at it, and I sort of read you guys the beginning of a paper or blog post that I've been writing about this. But I think that there is a proven track record for prediction markets. There's a proven track record for futarchy as a sort of decentralized, highly commercially oriented decision-making process, which can bring in the best minds to make decisions for any specific question. I think we can and should look to be building that, and I'm writing more about this, and it will take me a little bit of time to publish something on this, but I think that after sort of like our intermediate steps, I think that is the future, and I think one of the most powerful things that we can build is basically like a system which uses a prediction market to make these decisions instead of a person like me or a committee like Bitocracy. I think the free market, properly incentivized and properly designed around decision making, which is what a futarchy system or a prediction market system is a massive experiment in and of itself, which could definitely fail, but if it succeeds, just becomes like this black hole of it just sucks in all the world's best ideas and could become the most powerful decision making system we've ever seen. Anyway, I have a lot of weird ideas. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to convince you guys of all of them.
Well, it's worth a shot. Iago, I'd like to move on to questions collected from the community prior to the call. Some of them have been answered during this call, so I won't repeat them. I'll kick it off. The first ones are about the Sovryn core contributors, and who is still on the Sovryn core contributor team, and in what capacity and what are they working on? So some of this has been answered, but
the Sovryn team hasn't changed almost at all. In terms of like people who are working as sort of like or working as part of the team, what everyone is working on more and more, and I think basically should become 100% focus for everyone is right now is BOS.
Okay. Then we have a question about the state of the Launchpad. How much work is needed to get it into a working product?
I'm not sure that the Launchpad. Look, don't over-index on the Launchpad. I don't think it's a super important product. I think it is a product. It's another product that we could launch. I don't think it's ever going to be a massive, like one of our massive products. I don't think it's anywhere near the scale of BitcoinOS and not near the scale of NeoDex. I think it might actually, but that said, we've sort of built out an interface. We've built out the ability to pre-fund, and we're building out the ability to do different kinds of sales into it. Making steady progress. Probably could be pretty ready for some user testing by the community quite soon.
Okay. There's a question, I think it became a little bit irrelevant. I want to touch upon it quickly. How much work is going to making our DEX rollup ready at this point? And can this work be ported also to other rollups than BitcoinOS?
We have rollup technology that is getting very, very close to testnet with full proving of its state to Bitcoin. There are some challenges that we're encountering around the proving itself, which we're currently working on. Once we solve those, we'll be ready for testnet. Whether or not Sovryn should launch a rollup itself, I'm very, very skeptical of that. I just don't see, like, if we were to launch a rollup, I would do it as a separate project. I think you guys can see that there's a theme here. I do not think that Sovryn should be looking to sort of build its own projects. And not everyone agrees with me, and I'm happy to have the debate. It's not my decision to make. But I have a very, very, for me, I've become convinced this is the best way forward for Sovryn. So we're very close to having that technology available to us to do with it as whatever it is that we decide. Blue Monkey's asking if the Launchpad is not our massive product, then what is the massive product for self-holders? I don't really understand, to be honest, how I've managed to communicate this so poorly. The answer is boss is what we should be focused on for now. After that, I think there's a huge opportunity with NeoDex. I think there's a Launchpad as well. And then I think there's additional opportunities which is beyond the scope of this conversation to discuss. But I just don't understand why, like, I'm clearly doing something wrong if I'm not managing to communicate that very, very key idea. Right now, my view, 100% focus on boss. Boss is a success, we'll all do great.
Let's take this from Jimmy. Will be the incentive to keep staking SOV if BitcoinOS rewards dwindle? Would we have to wait until boss launches? I assume you mean token here, Jimmy.
Um, yes, we need to continue staking. First of all, there's staking rewards which are constantly accruing. We also need to continue staking because we need to be making decisions. Later, will we continue to use Bitocracy and staking in the way that we have up until now? I don't see a situation where we can give up on Bitocracy anytime soon. I think we would need to build a separate governance system, launch it, and see it work in the wild before we can give up on Bitocracy. I have some ideas on what that governance system could be, but I see for the foreseeable future that Bitocracy will continue to be the glue that holds Sovryn together, that governs Sovryn, that governs our the way that we choose to use our resources. And if BTC rewards are insufficient, then we can come up with some other plan, for example, SOV rewards as an interim solution as we go through this transitional process. David asks, are there any plans to involve SOV more directly with BOS that aligns community more directly with it? Possibly a way to incentivize users and make alignment stronger. And then he says OS Sov, like BitcoinOS Sov. Yeah, I think we are going to move all of Sov. And I think this has been the plan for over a year now. Sov will canonically transform to not being a rootstock ERC20 token, but to be a token on Bitcoin, on BitcoinOS. And it will unchain itself from rootstock, unchain itself from any chain, and become a system that lives on BitcoinOS. And I don't think we need much deeper alignment than that. But on top of that, we also have the alignment around the token allocation and the alignment around the fact that there are additional products that are being built out because of our work with BitcoinOS, partly by developers who are not receiving, mostly by developers who are not receiving a single cent from us at this point in time, are building technologies that we're going to use to build the next products for Sovryn. I do not see how we could have tighter alignment.
I'll continue with the document question. What steps can be done to cut costs without endangering current operations? Are there any plans for future funding rounds to extend runway? Are any grants from other DAOs considered? Let's stop there.
We could potentially consider a fundraise in the future. My view is that first we need to get BOS out. BOS needs to be successful. It needs to be clear that Sovryn has successfully launched a massive project and is also sitting on a significant asset base. And then all options become available to us. We can raise more capital, change the composition of the team. We can launch new projects. We can do another capital raise. Everything becomes possible. It's a massive unlock. So my view is that we will get many degrees of freedom that we do not have now, right? It doesn't mean that life's going to become simple. Life will be just as confusing. There'll be just as many decisions, if not more decisions that need to be made. But we will have the resources, the reputation, the asset base available to us, and the technologies available to us to be able to make more big bets, raise more capital. And now, in my view, each time that we launch one of these projects, there's an opportunity for that to be an additional capital raise for Sovryn as well. We build out the product and then launch it as an independent project. There's an opportunity for a capital raise there. Part of that capital could potentially come back to Sovryn. We might not need to raise capital if we can successfully utilize the opportunities available to raise capital via selling off these projects. That's effectively what that is. You build up a project and then you sell it. You retain some part ownership of it, and you retain some of the capital that comes in from the sale.
Okay. I'll go back to chat questions. One from Brianna. Brianna, I have to tell you, I didn't miss your question. I skipped it because of your opening statement. I find it insulting, and I don't find it helpful. However, the question itself is relevant, so I'll bring it up. If these are
Brianna's asking per my question at the top. What was Brianna's question? I want to respond.
I don't see your question at the top, Brianna. But now you're asking if these are separate projects, including in capital, as you said, Yago, are you funding them from the sale of SOV?
No, there's been no. With BitcoinOS, I went to great lengths with other people, many not on BitcoinOS, and many not part of Sovryn, to independently make sure that the capital was available. There was no capital requirement from Sovryn. I don't think that that's the way you should do it in the future. I think in the future we should think of ourselves as a project able to deploy capital. Do you need to do it through the sale of SOV? Maybe. That would be a decision. Do you do it through the sale of some other assets that you have, which might include BOS? Maybe. That's a decision that needs to be made. But we should position ourselves in a way where which we have the capital to pursue these opportunities.
Okay.
Bitocrat asks how
Yeah.
are the Sovryn developers working on BOS being paid? They're being paid by BOS. They're being paid by Sovryn, as per the SIP that we voted on, where the decision was that Sovryn is going to become one of the primary projects supporting, developing, and building BOS.
David asks, OSOV question mark, and I assume since
I think I
we're
already responded to that question about moving
thank you.
SOV and Sovryn into BitcoinOS.
Thank you. Okay. Brianna, we did answer your entire question.
Brianna, I don't understand what question you're asking. So if you want to rephrase, I'm happy to answer it.
Okay, I'm gonna do another document question.
Oh, wait, so Futoko is asking, when you hash out your ideas to justify holding Sovryn, could you please update and market a project roadmap as soon as possible? I'm aware that you do not see the need for roadmaps. I do see the need for roadmaps, but the roadmap is right now pretty short. It's basically sort of what I showed you guys. Like right now, we're focused on BOS. We will then be deploying the Launchpad. I think it should be deployed as a separate project. We'll then be deploying Neodex as a separate project, deeply integrated with BOS, deeply integrated with um, the Launchpad, and then there's many other things that we can consider. I've put out previously a list of some of them, and I can put out a list of more in the future. And Brianna says, my question is this: is development on Sovryn over? I see a lot of things about BitcoinOS, which clearly looks different, like a different project. Is that what this OSOV token in my rewards is related to? Can you address my concerns that I and others funded Sovryn developers by purchasing large amounts of SOV that you were selling to fund development costs? Yet you use the funds to build something else. Why would people invest in your new project if you used investments to build something other than what you were paid to develop? In the business world, this is embezzlement. I don't personally see a need for higher volumes or anything since Rootstock handles everything just fine. But if this was necessary for Sovryn, then why are holders of the SOV token, holders who are not essentially investors or shareholders, not compensated with 100% ownership of the new product? Brianna, so this is actually a topic that we've discussed a lot, and there have been a number of tips around it. No funds were used to begin the development of BitcoinOS. There was a strict separation initially between anyone working on BitcoinOS and Sovryn. Ultimately, a SIP was taken that BitcoinOS is going to take on the responsibility of being a significant developer of the BitcoinOS platform, and is going to launch BitcoinOS and is going to allocate to itself 10% of the BitcoinOS, the BOS tokens. So the deal is that Sovryn is launching BitcoinOS, deploying resources to build BitcoinOS, and is receiving 10% of BOS tokens. The other part of the question that you ask is that we're not developing what oh, sorry. The first part of the question is the development of Sovryn over? No, Sovryn is continuing to develop, right? The difference is that instead of having everything, every product that Sovryn launches be owned 100% by Sovryn, controlled 100% by Sovryn, maintained 100% by Sovryn, invested in 100% by Sovryn, which is impossible. We just simply do not have the capital, the team, or the ability to do that and continue to grow. Instead, what I'm proposing here, and I have been proposing now for a long time, is that Sovryn launches these as independent products. French, we have a few more minutes. Do you want to ask a couple more questions?
Sure. When are money markets ready? And then is the BOS testnet going to be in Q4?
If the idea, okay, so I think, look, we were working on a new version of the money markets to be deployed on a BOS and Bitcoin Squared, and potentially on Rootstock. That work has stopped entirely. It was a big, difficult decision, but the decision was taken to stop that work entirely because it's just another example of losing focus. It's another example of trying to do too many things and then not doing any of them well enough. It's another example of building more systems that we need to maintain. The focus now is BOS. Once BOS is launched, we can take the money markets, deploy them on BOS, spin that out as a separate project, get more revenue that way. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. For stablecoins, for the DEX, take everything that we've built, build it much bigger and better in BOS, and deploy.
Jimmy, ask why not 10% BOS now, ASAP?
It's already happened. The SIP to allocate the 10% of BOS to Sovryn has already happened. It's passed. It's done. The only question that remains right now is around the any vesting schedule that may be associated with BOS that hasn't been decided more globally across. It doesn't involve just Sovryn. It's just a question for all of the founding projects, and so a decision will be likely made around that sometime in January, which will be brought to be ratified by Sovryn. Now, Sovryn can choose to ignore or reject it. The risk around that is that nobody will want to work with Sovryn, and that Sovryn will not be able to launch a version of BitcoinOS that anyone wants to use.
Okay. Next question is about the BOS Cardano integration. I'm not sure. We have 1 minute. Is the BOS Cardano integration going to happen?
Yes. Just 2 or 3 days ago, the Cardano community voted around supporting various products and new projects on Cardano. One of these is a project called I forget. Sorry, the name slips my mind. Anyway. Bottom line is what the number one project, which got by far the most votes. It received votes from 515 million ADA. Was for the integration of BitcoinOS. So that is moving forward with a huge amount of support.
Thank you very much.
And capital behind that. They also decided to allocate capital to it.
That's actually hugely impressive. That we should tweet about it, perhaps. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. Thank you, Iago. This has been a highly informative, very dense community call. We will have another one in the next year. I want to wish everybody happy holidays, happy winter solstice. But in particular, I want to wish you a happy Bulls run. Thank you, everybody. See you next year.
Thank you, everyone. Stay sovereign.
Stay sovereign.